transform my performance with words. Communication has always been important to me, and as you may know, I spent a lot of time in advertising, and either working as an account manager or previously working as a brand manager. That the job involved working with disparate groups of highly creative or scientific people, and also working with the shop floor. So communication was important, and I could generally get along with people. I had that ability, really. I could generally get along with people. However, I was also reserved, which meant that I wouldn't always volunteer my opinion, and or sometimes I would have difficulty expressing myself in what were highly articulate and fast-moving environments. So I knew that I wanted to do something about my communication, that is the interpersonal communication. How do you communicate with people under pressure and put your point into the pot without disrupting things completely through frustration and anger, which sometimes would surface. Anyway, I was working at Programs Group, as I've mentioned before, and there was a huge emphasis on communication, humanistic communication, sales communication, management communication, leadership communication. We did a tremendous amount. In fact, you might call it a university of communication, really. Anyway, during this time, while I was experimenting with my communication, I did take a wrong turn. I started to explore direct and aggressive communication, not so much in the workshop, but I took that into the everyday working relationships. And what I realized over a period of time was that communication, as well as being creative in some moments, was also destructive. This had implications for me. I noticed that socially I would be excluded from certain groups, and some of my informal information networks started to dry up. And after a period of years, I wondered if I was doing something wrong. Okay. In fact, I was. But no one really pointed it out to me in a way that I could take action on. And the effect of the reducing information circles and social circles left me in quite a lonely place, and also in some ways I felt it was quite cruel. But there you have it. I had created it, I know, through the way that I'd gone about things. So I wanted to do something about it. I had come across, through again programs initially, I came across something called Neurolinguistic programming, and I did play with it quite a lot in sales situations, because when you're on the phone, for example, you don't have a lot of information, so the tempo of breathing and tone becomes quite critical before you speak, when you get through to somebody or when you're speaking, and that was very useful, but I hadn't really connected the dots. And I did some further training formal training in the subject, and then the penny dropped for me in this particular area. In the past, if I wasn't getting on with I'd get on with quite a lot of people, but if I wasn't getting on with someone, I'd say, okay, well, I'm just not getting on with that person, or there is probably something wrong with that person rather than there being something wrong with me. That through neurolinguistic programming, I was introduced to my own 5 senses and language and experience, and it dawned on me that you and I can only communicate through the bridge of those 5 senses. And you and I are going to indicate which particular bridge we're crossing through our use of words, through the predicates that we choose. And you and I are going to be completely different in the way that we describe the same thing. Now, once I realized that I had a preference or a style of communication that I'd worked out for myself that worked for me, and the other person that I was talking to, they also had a preference and a style of communication that they had worked out for themselves, and it was completely different to mine, a certain amount of freedom emerged, because all I had to do was to move to their model of the world, and the gateway to that model were the sensory modalities they were choosing to use in the sequence that they used them in. This opened up a whole world of opportunity, which we later incorporated into our business. But the short story is that I was able to transform my performance with words.